is less government, more fun. Pass it on, make it happen.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines Radio is all about being right. No, seriously, it is. If you ever listen to Russ Gallo or me go back and forth on some issue, we always want to make sure that we remember who said what and when we said it. That's why we go to goonrecord.com. It's a brand new social media website. Challenge people on what they believe, whether it's in politics, sports, entertainment, finance, whatever. There's a category for you at goonrecord.com. Check it out right now. Tell us, what do you stand for? It's time for you to go on record. Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air. Gene Baradelli, back behind Enemy Lines. Joining me on the line right now, we have a legitimate legend on the phone, a legendary political consultant, a New York Times bestselling author, and without a doubt, I believe the word iconoclast probably best describes him. Roger Stone. Sir, thank you for coming on.
Great to be here. Many thanks.
Yeah, great to have you back again. Last time we talked, we were talking about the Clintons' War on Women book, which was a fantastic success. And you've written another book now, congratulations, all about Donald Trump. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Yeah, I'm very proud of my new book, The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated an American Revolution. Without any question, this is kind of the definitive insider's account of the greatest upset in U.S. political history. And I tried to use the style of the late Theodore H. White, who wrote The Making of the President 1960. The book is kind of a combination of analysis of big picture trends in the country that allowed for the election of Trump, as well as some, nitty-gritty vignettes from the campaign trail. Gave you a flavor of the campaign. So it's a good read. There's a lot in here you didn't know about this election, but I explained why I think it was possible for Trump to win, why the pollsters were all wrong, the role of the mainstream media in the election, and so on.
Very good. Now, you're credited with kind of pegging Donald Trump to being a future president way before anybody really ever thought of him as even a candidate. What is it that you saw, and when did you see it?
Well, I started thinking about Donald Trump for president as early as 1988. I met him in 1979 when I was working on Governor Ronald Reagan's campaign for president, running the New York State campaign, in addition to several other northeastern states. And I was immediately taken with his size. I don't mean his physical size, although, he's tall and broad-shouldered like Reagan. He is an imposing figure, but I'm talking about something bigger than that. It's actually greater than charisma. It's kind of a command presence, a stature, if you will. And I'd seen this before. Reagan had it. Nixon had it. Dwight Eisenhower had it. Former Texas Governor John Connally had it. George H.W. Bush never had it. But he had that quality that when he walks into a room, all eyes are on him. When he speaks, all ears are listening to him. So I thought also, from the beginning, because of his wealth, he had an independence that was very important. He was not beholden to any special interest or any special industry or any special pleader. And I think that independence is still why he has the potential to be one of our greatest presidents.
You know what? I just have in the room right now a special co-host of mine, Gerald Gross, another fellow attorney of mine. He's got a question he wants to ask you as well. Go ahead.
Hey, Roger, how are you?
Excellent.
On that same vein, were you ever concerned that perhaps Donald Trump was not necessarily as artful in his eloquence as some of the other individuals you just mentioned?
Look, he's not a career politician, and he has a leadership style and a speaking style and organization style of his own. But I prefer to kind of look at these things historically. They said Andrew Jackson was vulgar, crude, ill-mannered, ignorant, a wild man. He was one of our greatest presidents. They said that Theodore Roosevelt was an egomaniac, a self-promoter, a fraud, a lightweight. He also turned out to be one of our greatest presidents. I don't think you can judge these things by a standard set by a previous president. They've all had their own individual brand and style of leadership. You're right, Donald Trump does not speak in the polished form of a career politician. He talks the way real people talk. He talks the way, Americans talk around the dinner table. He speaks colloquial English. It's not polished. It's not high oratory, but I think it's extremely effective.
And considering we just got finished with a great orator that really did nothing to further the country and President Obama, it seemed like the right time for that as well, Roger, I would think. Now, I just want to transition to one thing that you bring up in your book, which I think a lot of liberals are still hand-wringing over, and that is how the media got Donald Trump all wrong. What is it that did it for him? Was it the advent of social media and the level of interaction that brings now was underestimated? Or was it the bubble effect of mainstream media being in New York, Washington, LA, Chicago, and all these places where they seem to be all talking amongst themselves?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. One of the important themes of the book is that this is the election in which the mainstream media monopoly on the dissemination of political information was finally broken. Prior to this election, the NBCs, the ABCs, the NBCs, the two cable networks really had a monopoly on what we learned and what we heard about the candidates. But because of the technological advance of a majority of Americans now getting their political news on a computer device, as opposed to a television set in the living room, you have given rise to the alternative media, meaning when people go to their handheld device for the purpose of watching television, let's say, they very quickly learn that there are much better, more accurate, more objective news outlets than, say, CNN. And therefore they start following alternative media. This gave rise to Trump's candidacy because there was a medium in which he was not interpreted by people who were hostile, and he was able to communicate more directly. Now you add to that his own mastery of Twitter, Facebook, a whole new channel of communications compared to previous presidential campaigns. And I think those things make a Trump victory possible. Couple that with the fact that the pollsters, the media pollsters, most, but not all, but most of the professional pollsters made a fundamental error in assuming that the electorate would be identical to the electorate 4 years ago in terms of turnout, makeup, percentages, and so on. That was probably never realistic. So they based their polling on a false premise that the turnout and makeup of the electorate would be identical to what it was 4 years ago. It was different. There were more white Catholics. There were more rural voters. There were fewer African-American voters, and so on. And those small but significant changes in the electorate are why the polling was wrong. They were polling the wrong people. And also why the election result was such a shocker.
Roger, let me ask you, this is Gerald Gross. Having said that, what effect do you believe polling will have in future elections, particularly presidential elections?
It will continue to have the same effect, meaning polls are interesting. People like to know where the horse race stands. Political junkies like ourselves are addicted to them. But I guess the result of this election is pollsters will be more careful. Pollsters will be more thoughtful about drawing their sample to get a sample that more nearly fits the ultimate electorate. The one pollster out there who did adjust for what he thought would be the turnout, who did see the potential for Trump to win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, of course, is Tony Fabrizio, Republican pollster, a New Yorker, someone who told me early that the Democratic pollsters, the media pollsters, had it wrong, that their sample makeup was incorrect, and that Trump could win. And then in the end, he told me that he would win. Of course, he was correct.
Absolutely, and it seemed like Trump kind of revolutionized voter targeting based upon those numbers as well. I love talking about all the wonky stuff, but you know what? I gotta ask the questions that everybody want me to ask, and that has to do with the news of the day and the investigation into this alleged Russian interference into our elections and how you're getting caught up with it. First, I just want to ask you about the news breaking this week about Devin Nunes recusing himself, and feel you out as to whether that is a good thing or a bad thing for this investigation, in your opinion.
Well, I think it's, look, I like Devin Nunes. I think he's an honest guy. He's not an attorney. He's not a political sophisticate.
Wait, what are you trying to say? You got two attorneys in the room, Roger. Hang on a second.
And now Trey Gowdy, who is an attorney and a former prosecutor, will lead this investigation.
Excellent save.
And also Tom Rooney, who's a fine congressman from my home state of Florida. The important thing is to have the investigation, because see, what the Democrats now really want is no investigation, because they know they're busted. Let me be as clear as I possibly can. I know of no Russian collusion or influence on the Trump campaign. It is a damnable lie. When the New York Times reports on January 20th that the intelligence services say they have proof, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. Let's see the proof. Let's touch the proof. Let's weigh the proof. Evidence. The kind of evidence that would stand up in a court of law. Let's see that evidence. Let me be clear. They have nothing. They have zero. It's a political claim, very cleverly invented by John Podesta, the Clinton campaign manager, to distract from the fact that he and his brother and the Clintons were up Putin's ass, that they made millions on business deals with the clique around Putin. So it distracts from all of that, and it puts the focus on Trump. There is no evidence that I know of Russian collusion. I had no contacts with any representative or stand-in for the Russian state. The claim that my now entirely public and innocuous exchange with Goosefer 2.0 on Twitter constitutes collusion is disproved by the content of the exchange, the timing of the exchange, and the circumstances of the exchange. It's not possible for me to collude with him on a hacking that took place 6 weeks before we communicated. And this is our only communication, unless, of course, I owned a time machine, which I don't.
Well, I'm glad we ruled that out. I do not concede that Goosefer 2.0 is a Russian asset. Just because the CIA says he is, that doesn't mean it's true.
They also said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.